We said our prayer before heading out for the house, and I just said, Lord, I have done what I can do. The rest is in your hands.
Welcome back to another video. I'm so excited for this video today. I have someone here with me that I've looked up to my whole life and was honestly one of the first examples of a missionary in my life that I can remember. Brock, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Brock is one of my cousins. He, like I said, I wanted to bring this up at some point. Maybe now is just the time right at the beginning, but I was talking to Olivia yesterday, my wife, and I was telling her that I was at the age that I fully understood what a mission was, and you were an important enough person in my life that you were the first person that was like going on a mission, and it was like, whoa, like that's crazy. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about it because I know you have some awesome stories, but yeah, maybe to start out, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, who you are, and then the process of deciding to go on a mission and where you got called to.
Yeah. So I'm Brock Smith. I grew up I lived in Layton until I was about 7, and then we moved to Mountain Green, which is where my dad grew up and where your mom grew up.
Yeah.
So I grew up not too far away from there. And went to high school at Morgan. It was awesome there. Was fortunate to have really good friends, and also really fortunate my older brother was an awesome example to me of just everything. Chase was a pretty hard act to follow, but it was good because I think he was so good. My mom just was like, well, if Brock can just get through it, then we'll be fine. So
I was in that same boat.
I just kind of followed Chase's lead, but was super blessed to have him. He went and served a mission. So my brother and I are pretty close in age, like you and your brothers. Chase is, I think, 21 months older than I am. So I remember when we dropped Chase off at the MTC, it was the old way where you'd go in. I don't think you ever had experienced this, but you would walk in and they would just have this big room, and the families would all go there and they would share what the mission's going to be like. And you're sitting next to your missionary, and then they open up the doors on both sides and said, missionaries, you go right, families, you go left.
No way.
And you say goodbye. And I remember, so I was there, and it hit me that I probably wouldn't see Chase for 4 years because we were so close we would overlap.
Right.
Which I think, did you have that with some
Yeah.
others? So, yeah, and that's what happened because Chase left I think he left in October. And then in 2008, and then I left in July. I entered in July 21st of 2010.
Oh, wow.
So a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I left in 2010, and then mine was the more how it is now. They kick you off at the curb and drop you off, and
right.
you kind of go on your way. But
and did you go to the Provo MTC?
Yeah, Provo MTC. The cool. MTC, actually, when I was there, the Mexico City MTC was the private school.
No way.
Private school.
Okay,
so
cool.
It was a church private school.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a great MTC because it was set up for housing for students.
Yeah, exactly.
For the private
well,
high school.
I went to the Mexico MTC, and I remember learning kind of what they had used it for. And yeah. I mean, it's the most insane campus.
It's massive.
And it is mind blowing, honestly. And it's just plopped right there in the middle of Mexico City.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that my wife went there because she.
Oh, is that right?
Wow. She went to San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
On her mission.
Okay.
But she went down to the
nice.
Mexico City MTC.
That's awesome.
But I went to Provo because at that time the MTC in Mexico City was on the Temple Square of Mexico City.
Oh,
okay.
And
it was just for the local missionary or local natives that were going on to their missions. Because we got to visit the temple once, and they had all the missionaries, all the natives were there.
Oh, nice.
It was much smaller.
Super cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So tell me about making the decision to go on a mission and receiving your call.
Yeah. So I felt like it was something that I always was wanting to do from an early age. And like I said, I had I had good examples. I had a good older brother, and I had good brothers-in-laws that had
Yeah.
served missions. That, um, I know that my older sister Megan, she dated Todd in high
Yeah. Yeah.
school,
Oh yeah.
and like watching him get ready to go on a mission. Derek came home from a mission, and then him and my sister Mandy got married. So had pretty good examples and role models there. Um, but I had an older friend. We were the same grade, but he was born in December. I was born in April, and so he did a semester of college and then came home to get ready to go on a mission. And I was just at Weber State, so I just stayed home because there was no sense in moving 10 minutes down the road. But
Right.
so I hung out with his name was Matt. I hung out with Matt a lot, and just watching him get ready for a mission made it very real for me
Yeah.
because then I shortly followed after that.
Right.
So I remember I put in my papers, and I for sure wanted to go foreign. I wanted to learn a language.
Yeah.
My brother went to India, New Delhi, which was a nutty mission,
Right.
but he didn't have
That's
to learn a
so wild. We
language.
need to have him on too.
He's got some stories for
I'm
sure.
sure.
But so was just kind of seeing what would happen. But I don't know. I was like Europe and Italy would be so cool, but that wasn't in the cards for me. And so I just remember I got my call, and I got called to Mexico City. And I just remember, like, when I read it, I was like, everyone goes to Mexico. Like, that's nothing special. But um, it ended up being the absolute best mission for me. And I think a lot of times you can say that, the mission that you go to was the best mission for you. And there's a and
Absolutely.
there's a reason.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And so I wouldn't trade, going to Mexico City for anything. That was for sure where the Lord needed me and where I needed to be.
Yeah. It. I love that you say that because I think a lot of people read their call and it's underwhelming. I remember reading Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, and we had some relatives there, so
Yep.
that made it cool. But I was like, oh man, all my buddies are going to, Fiji and Argentina and all these crazy places. But it's so interesting to start your mission and kind of unfold the reasons why it is you're there, like the people you're meeting, the lessons that you're learning that you could only learn in that mission. And they feel so unique and specific to you that it confirms to you that, I'm where the Lord needs me to be, you know? So tell me about starting that process of going out on your mission. What was that like, starting your mission in Mexico, or, if you have any stories from the MTC as well?
Yeah.
Um, just dive in.
Yeah, we entered in July, and it was awesome for me. I think my mom was pretty worried about me. Um, as
They're good
mothers
at
do.
that.
She worries so I don't have to, still to this day, which is nice. But no, I jumped in and just kind of knew that I'd be in over my head, and I was like, we'll go with it and see how it goes. But I had an awesome MTC group, so all of us except for one went to the same mission,
Mm,
which was cool.
yeah,
So and then
that's pretty unique.
yeah, and then
Doesn't always
my
happen.
my MTC companion, we finished our missions together in the same district,
Oh,
so we came
cool.
home together.
That's awesome.
So that was way cool. So that was pretty great, and just had a really good group, and they were really good at, we strived really hard to be obedient, and um, we didn't really horse around much, which was good. We were able to kind of buckle down right out the gates. But I remember at that time, the reason why we didn't go to the Mexico City MTC is because visas were really hard to
Huh.
get into Mexico. For whatever reason at that time, something between the governments, that it was hard to get an MTC or get out of the MTC. So I remember because for Spanish speaking at the time, it was 8 weeks.
Oh,
But
wow.
because our visas were taking so long, I stayed there for an extra 3 weeks.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Dang.
So, and then other missionaries, because my visa was far enough along, they kept me in the
Huh.
MTC because I was close. But some other kids from my district, my MTC group, they got shipped out to other missions for like a
Like
transfer,
stateside, right?
for
Okay.
just like a transfer. But they were all able to make it down to Mexico City.
Cool.
But yeah, so then I was there 11 weeks, and they
Oh my
took away
goodness.
our teachers.
No
So
way.
they're like, "Hey, personal study time," and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I was like ready to bounce off the
I was
walls.
gonna say, as I mean, the MTC is an awesome place, but
Oh
you kind of get ready to go pretty. I mean, especially if you have the expectation of leaving at 8 and then they tag on
yeah,
3 more weeks.
you're
That's
just
not easy.
you're just like, "Oh my gosh!" And then like yeah, I just was like, I was so sick of the food by that point,
Oh
just
yeah,
because it was so repetitive. It was the same thing, and so I just was, we were kind of like, well, what do we do? And then they kicked us out of our classroom. And we had to find a spare because a new group was coming in. So we had to find a new classroom. And I
that's
remember
awesome.
it's like middle of the summer or end of the summer, it's hot. And they sent us to this room where the AC doesn't work.
Of course,
And so, like, we're just like sitting there bringing in fans and just like sweating,
just the leftover
just the
missionaries.
leftover missionaries they didn't know what to do with. And most of our group was still there. But what we did is we got with like our current or our previous MTC teachers, and they'd come in when they had a minute or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever and chat with us. But then like we would get with them and the other missionaries to go and like do um, lessons and uh, stuff with their missionaries, because they're like,
Uh-huh.
hey, these missionaries will come in and you can kind of role play with them because
Cool.
we spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
And then we would have because you'd go to your Sunday meetings and you had your bishop or whatever, and they would be, and his wife was like, "This is such a blessing that you're staying in the MTC to learn Spanish."
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "Your Spanish is so good." And then I went to Mexico, and after my first contact, I was like, "I should have just gotten here 3 weeks ago because I have no idea what she just said to me."
Yeah. That sounds about right. It's funny you leave the MTC with so much confidence, think you've been studying your brains out, and then you get out there and you're like, dang, I do not know one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I remember my first contact. I said my spiel, and then she responded to me, and it was just the like almost identical to how it was in the best 2 years. I just turned to my trainer, and I'm like, "You got this. This one's yours."
That's awesome.
Because I was like, I was able to get my point across that we were missionaries and we'd like to share a message or something along those lines. And then she responded, and I was like, her Spanish was so fast.
Right.
And I was like, I have no idea what she just said. So I just turned to my trainer and was like, this one's all you.
Hey, that's awesome. Hey, that you're doing your job,
Yeah.
I think, and that hopefully the trainer's there to fill in.
Yeah. But yeah, so landed there and was very overwhelmed. But, and it's hard because it was very easy to not be part of the conversation. And I just felt so tired because like you were just like using all of your brain strength just to try to stay in the conversation and to participate.
Right.
I just remember being so tired. Just like yeah. So it was pretty overwhelming, and because we were in the MTC for those 3 weeks, we came in halfway through the transfer.
Okay.
So then I was only with my trainer for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they shipped him to another area.
Wow.
And they sent me a new companion.
Dang.
And so like 3 weeks in to the field, and then I'm trying to remember where I just remember telling the new companion, is like, I'm not super familiar with the area, but I know
Right.
where our investigators are.
Yeah, yeah.
And he says, that's good. He says,
That's
we
all
can
that
work
matters.
with that.
Yes.
So that's kind of where my first area, which is pretty cool because they just announced a temple to be built in Tula.
Oh, wow.
So that my first area that I served in was in Tula, and it's in north of Mexico City. It's actually in a different state, but just a little bit north of the city there, in a
Okay.
smaller.
How big was your mission? Because was
Like,
it, I want to say, aren't there several missions there now?
when
Kind
and my mission's been split into, since I've been home, my mission's been split into 3,
of, okay.
or they've taken parts from it, and
Right.
turned it into three missionary different missions. But I technically didn't have any of the city limits. We were just north, but it's still just crazy because the suburban area of Mexico City, I think, is like the 4th or 5th largest
Mm-hmm.
in the world,
Yeah.
city-wise. So it was very dense population. But when I was there were 6 missions in Mexico City
Okay.
alone. And
Oh,
now
wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I looked on the app thing to see, and there's probably quite a few because we were north, so we would have areas we pretty decent size, and so they took that and built those into different missions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never I was pretty close to Hidalgo was the name, and then the state of Mexico for my whole 2 years.
Nice.
Just kind of bounced around those different areas.
I remember being in Mexico and obviously spent most of my time just in the MTC there in that little bubble
Hmm.
is really how it felt. And we went to the Mexico City Temple a couple times, and it was funny to go outside those walls and see, the
The
heart of
old
Mexico City just operating. And I just remember being like, this is insane. Like, this is so crazy. And I remember leaving the MTC and just being so happy that I wasn't staying there. Like, I just remember because there was kids going to the Mexico City mission or a mission nearby, and I was just like, man, I'm so glad that I'm going back to Atlanta right now to eat some Chick-fil-A in the airport before I head to Virginia.
yeah.
But tell us about maybe share a story or two that kind of illustrates what it's like to be a missionary in Mexico.
Um, the people were pretty awesome, uh, and they're very friendly. Um, I think one of the best things that why the members and why the church flourishes so well in Mexico City is because the Mexican culture and the Mexican people are very family oriented,
Mm-hmm.
as is the gospel.
Right.
So I think it just kind of hit home for them, and so they were. And it's funny because like anywhere, but when you're kind of out in the country away from the city, the people are very friendly and they'll just say yes because they don't want to be rude.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're interested.
Right.
And then when you get in the city, you get more people that are like, I feel like if they tell you yes, it's more sincere
Huh.
because they're more like whatever.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it goes. They're more the closer you get to Mexico City, they're chilangos and they're more tough and they're more
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
direct with you. Where
Yeah.
out in the small towns, they're like, sure, come by, and then you knock and then they ignore you or whatever because
Yeah.
they don't want to be around. So that was kind of some of just like how the people were, but the members were great, and I think that's the reason why the church does so well there is because the members. I just remember like in a lot of the different wards, every Sunday they would just come and introduce themselves to the investigators and just reach out to them and were very friendly
Just naturally.
just naturally.
Yeah.
And I wish we could do better at that here. Granted, I don't know how many investigate, there it's pretty easy to you see who comes in with the missionaries if they're investigators, but
Right.
it's not like you necessarily know.
Yeah.
But even, people that maybe are coming back or are less active or struggling, like I think we could do better at reaching out.
Absolutely. No, it's so true, and that's another big reason why I love having these conversations. Is it's always good to kind of reignite those missionary experiences to help us realize, those opportunities are still happening around us, and it's good to kind of keep an eye out to look for people who, maybe need a little help. And that's not even necessarily saying, come join the church and be baptized, but just looking out to serve people in a Christ-like way. And you become so aware as a missionary, you kind of retrain your brain to just be so on the lookout for people who just need help. Um, do you have any people or stories of people that you taught on your mission, or maybe a scary story or an inspiring story? I mean, I can't imagine serving a mission in Mexico City. You probably got all the above.
Yeah, I mean a little bit of everything. For me, I don't feel like my mission was that scary because like my older brother went to India, New Delhi, and he was thrown in jail and shot at. So he, in my opinion, had to. But then it's funny because my mom, they went and picked him up, but they're like, "Well, we don't want to pick you up because Mexico City's dangerous." And I was like, "I've never been shot at. I've
Yeah,
never been arrested. Like
yeah,
I was never, these things that were crazy." So I was like, I don't feel like it's that crazy, just regular city crime. But yeah, I had kind of all the above. Had the opportunity to teach a lot of really great people. Um, but and so many of them were I just was there. It wasn't necessarily. I remember in one of my areas, I told my companion, I was like, because I was like, we got nothing. I was like, tell you what, I had to do some reports or something, and I was like, look at the map. We had a big blown up map on the wall. I was like, look at the map. I was like, let's say a prayer, and then we'll each pick a street to go knock. And in this spare time that we had, and my companion chose this street, and I remember we were walking that street, and like the first or second door that we knocked, because they kind of in Mexico they have like a gate around, like they have a courtyard in the front
Uh-huh.
and like a door or gate, or it's a cement wall, and then their home is behind that, so they kind of got
Okay.
that. And so, but this one we were up on the street because it was on kind of a hilly area, so we could kind of look down into their front yard,
Nice.
and so we could see the lights were on. And my companion and I, we knocked the door, and this lady comes out, and she's like, "Oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you." And we were like, I was like, have we contacted this lady before on the
Yeah.
street? And she had worked at she worked at a store in a bus station and would always see us doing the transfers. She said, I always knew that you guys had something for me.
Huh.
And she was like, the easiest. We just went through the lessons and she just accepted it. And,
Wow.
but, we were just, we were there. That was nothing on my end, my companion's end. We just were there, and he listened to the Spirit, and we found her, and she was already, the Lord had been working on her, and she was ready.
Wow.
And so I wish that everybody was like that, but they weren't.
Yeah,
But
those are inspiring stories. Did she have family?
yeah, later her daughters and granddaughter got baptized. So she
Okay.
went first, and then we were able to baptize her daughters and
Wow.
granddaughter. And then she was, I think before I left my mission, she was put in the Relief Society. I think she was a counselor,
No way.
and so she was awesome. She was a very very good convert and member, and she did a lot of good and brought a lot of people into the church.
What did you learn from her? Seeing her being so accepting and willing to just allow Christ be a big part of her life. What's something that you learned from her?
I would say something that I learned from her was, they say be innocent like a child. Not naive. She wasn't naive. She had lived life. She was a grandma. She knew life, but she was innocent like a child, and just her faith was inspiring, and just her willingness to follow God. And I wish that we had more, especially in Mexico. I wish there were more members, more brethren that were like the sisters, because we'd go into the ward, and you would just see the Relief Society was just awesome, and
Running the show.
they were so many amazing sisters. And then you go to Others Quorum, and we had like a handful of okay guys.
Yeah.
I was like, brethren, step it up, and I still feel like that's true a little bit
Yeah.
everywhere. The women were always so receptive to the Spirit,
Yeah.
um, but just she was innocent like a child, and she just is like, this is right,
Yeah.
and she took that step, and it was not really, it was pretty smooth
Yeah.
sailing, which was, I feel like, pretty rare.
Yeah. That I I ask you that because as I've been having these conversations about hearing all these stories and about people's missions, is I'm the takeaway is that you go out on your mission to teach people, but you don't realize how much you learn and you take away until you've served a mission.
Yeah.
And you realize, even though obviously you taught her the lessons and helped her understand more about Christ and his church, like what you learn from her and what you learn from the people that you meet on your mission is just, you can't get it anywhere else. And I think she's a great example of someone that, if you're anything like me, I love thinking about the people that I taught on my mission while life gets hard, like since being home, and life gets hard and I'm struggling reading my scriptures or doing all of the things that I focused on my mission. I think about those people and think about what they thought of me an awesome missionary or a great example of someone who is spiritual and Christ centered, they still have that kind of expectation for you. And that's always given me the confidence and the strength to, try to prioritize those things.
Yeah.
But
Or at least be like, you know what, they they hold you in such a high standard. You're like, I should try to live up to that
yeah,
high standard, or try to honor what I taught them, and what I shared, and what I believed, and what I do believe.
yeah,
And I think that's a huge part. I think you have to be your first convert.
yeah,
You have to be committed. And I remember hearing stories growing up of people like I feel like they gained their testimony on the mission,
yeah,
which is fine. But I feel like you have to have a testimony before now.
yeah,
You can't just go wing it, gain your testimony on the mission.
yeah,
Like it's too much. There's too much. The world is a different place than it was back then. It's there. You have to be better.
yeah,
You have to be better prepared. You have to at least believe.
yeah,
It has to be in your heart before you can help others. And if it isn't in your heart, then it's going to be extra hard,
yeah,
and it's going to be very difficult. So you have to be your own convert. And I believe too, when you serve, that's the beauty of serving. When you serve, you receive so much more than you think you will by giving.
yeah,
I think of one of my favorite examples now is temple work. I go to do temple work for the dead, and I'm serving someone who has passed away to give them the opportunity to get baptized,
yeah,
receive their endowments and their initiatory, and
mm,
to go through and to be sealed. But at the same time, I am being uplifted,
right,
and it benefits me so much, and it helps recharge me spiritually, and it
yeah,
helps me with my wife. It helps me to be a better husband. It helps me to be a better brother, better son, better friend. That's the beauty of a mission, is that you are, and it's so nice because you don't have to worry about yourself that much.
right,
If you're clean
yeah,
and if you're obedient, you don't really have to
yeah,
worry about yourself. You're focused on other people, which is a nice burden,
right,
to not have to worry about
yeah,
yourself. But as you're like, hey, what is the Gonzalez family need? What does the Johnson family need? As you're focusing on them, and as you're teaching them, they also will teach you.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of missions, and I think that's why it works so well.
right. I remember coming the first night after coming home from my mission. I remember just hanging out with my family and feeling this like release of worry. It was really weird. Obviously, the next week it was a whole new different bundle of anxiety and worries and things to worry about. But what on your mission, you start to really care about these people, and not only about, their progression spiritually, but just as a friend, as someone who just you want them to succeed in life. And I just remember coming home from my mission and like that I wasn't worried about who was coming to church or who was, progressing in the lessons or doing all those things. And it was the weirdest feeling. Um, but there are several times where I wish I could go back to worrying about those things rather than the things that I deal with now. Obviously, there's a lot of beautiful things in life afterwards, but like you said, you don't really have much to like worry about on your mission. All you do is focus on other people. You don't need to worry about money, dating, where to live, like your social life. Like all that stuff is set aside for 2 years or 18 months. And all you do is just focus on serving people. And that's why it's such a funny experience to reflect on. And it's almost like a blissful stage of life where you just kind of can enjoy it. Like I feel like you can enjoy things on a much deeper level when you're focused on serving others.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And you do, when you start to care about the people, I feel like that's when it starts to get better and easier. And I just remember, like, in the beginning, you'd walk by like a fruit stand and they're putting like chili and salt and on fruit, and I was like, what is wrong with these people? And then, like, several months later, I am stopping at the fruit stand and I am
Yeah.
getting chili and salt, and I'm like, this is amazing. And then my wife and I both, because we both were working with, she was in San Antonio, but with the Latin culture, and so we both love to experience, like, oh, we'll do like tahine on our watermelon, or I
Yes.
found one where they would like dip it in, like, they'd wrap it in a fruit by the foot on watermelon and then dip it in chamoy and tahini, and I was like, "This is
Yeah.
amazing," and my family's like, "This is gross," and I was like, "Well, you have to love the people, and then you'll
Yeah,
love the food."
exactly.
But that's definitely a part of it, and when you start to get that and you start to just love them for who they are, the work gets a little bit easier. It's not, and that's the thing, is it's tough, but, like, when I look back at my 2 years, I'm like, "It was awesome."
Yeah.
And it was, and people said the best 2 years, and
Yeah.
it was. But that doesn't mean that it was easy.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the means, like, that was a very, it was good because, and I know that as humans you would love to just be, you're like, I would just love it to be easy and to not be difficult, but that's how you grow. And
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, that's when you're stretching, that's when you're
Yeah.
growing. And that's why I think it can be tough, because there is a lot of growth in the mission.
Yeah.
Um, but we signed up for that. We came down to life to be tried
Yeah.
and tested, and I think that, you know it's important to know that, and especially on your mission, if you allow it, will shape you into who the Lord needs you to be,
Yeah.
and so He's going to require a lot.
Yeah.
He's going to ask a lot.
Yeah.
He's going to ask a higher standard, and that's why as missionaries you live a higher standard.
Yeah.
You're not goofing off on your phone. You're not hanging out with your friends on weekends. You are living somewhere else on your own for the first time, and you're teaching the gospel to people who have real life problems and real spiritual problems, and
Yeah.
you're the answer.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be that conveyor of that, and you need to be in tune with the Spirit to know what to teach them, and that's a lot,
Yeah.
and it asks a lot of you as a missionary, and it's not just something that you can kind of go wing. It requires a lot of work, a lot of study, and a lot of practice.
It absolutely does. And you made me think of, because when you were saying how, especially today, you need to have your own testimony. You need to be strong enough spiritually to go on a mission. It makes me think of what the prophet is saying, to survive spiritually, it will be impossible without the guidance of the Holy Ghost in the Spirit. And I think that's getting more and more real as the adversary works to destroy family and Christ on a whole new level where we're at today. And I think that's so true. I'm trying to think of the scripture. It was in Come Follow Me this last week in DNC. Can't remember what section of Doctrine and Covenants, but basically it's the Spider-Man scripture where much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And I think about the way that, we were raised and we were lucky enough to have the gospel in our lives. And that's the much is given, right? We had been blessed with the knowledge of the gospel and kind of enjoyed the blessings of of knowing who Christ is and what he can do for us. And so the what is required of us, you could label that as serving a mission, and I think that if God is willing to bless us in our lives, he hopes that he expects us to go and share that, you know? And I think a mission's a beautiful way to do that. Um, do you have, I might be putting you on the spot here, but do you have any, sections in Preach My Gospel or any scriptures that you feel helped you on your mission?
Um, yeah, because Preach My Gospel was rolled out, I think, in 2005,
Okay.
because before they had the memorized discussions.
Right.
And they had run the memorized discussions for a long time.
Yeah.
You had to give lesson 1 and then
Yeah.
2
Joseph
and then
Smith
3.
wrote those, right?
Not quite, but
Basically.
I think it was, I know that Elder Holland experienced that, and then I know that my father and then my older brothers-in-law also experienced the discussion.
Yeah.
So Preach My Gospel was relatively new when I hit the mission field, but they were fully up and running with
Right.
Preach My Gospel. And I remember we had mission prep classes with Preach My Gospel, and that was awesome because I was able to kind of delve into that. But Preach My Gospel lays it out in such a way that as a missionary, just so long as you have a testimony and you're willing to put in hard work, if you follow what you can from Preach My Gospel, you can be a successful missionary. You don't have to be this great orator or this great scriptorian or just super eloquent with your words,
Uh-huh.
because it gives you a guide.
Yeah.
And like if you just kind of do something along these lines and follow the Spirit, you'll be successful.
Yeah.
And there were missionaries that maybe they were a little awkward or a little weird, but they still were, because they followed the Spirit and they love people. They were successful
Yeah.
missionaries. It didn't have to be just the ones that were well spoken and were charming
Right.
and had that charisma. It was the ones that could kind of follow along. But
Yeah.
I've got my old Preach My Gospel. They've updated
sweet.
it since then, but mine's I found my mission one.
Yes.
But I
That's
think
awesome.
because this is a great, but I would say the most important chapter, if you're planning on going on a mission or you're a recently returned missionary, I think chapter 6, how to develop Christ-like attributes, is going to be, because Christ was for sure the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
And he was the greatest missionary this world's ever known. So if you can go through and follow, he's got all these different things of how to be, have hope, charity, love, humility, patience, just all these things in this chapter. If you study each one of these and look at how the Savior had that and how you as a missionary can develop that and how that will benefit the people that you're teaching, chapter 6, I think, is a massive chapter, not just for a mission, but for life. Because the goal is to be Christ-like. We're Christians, despite what many believe. We follow Christ. And the best thing that we can do is try to be like, all right, these are some of his attributes. What can we do to develop those and to be more like him?
Right.
And going with that too, the other thought that I had in mind was in chapter 10, it talks about asking questions.
Oh, nice.
And it talks about asking inspired questions.
Yeah.
When you look at Christ's ministry in the New Testament, he was a master teacher. He taught in parables, but he asked thought-provoking questions.
Right.
He asked questions that he didn't just ask yes or no questions or tell you what to believe. He would ask you questions that people would then go and reflect in their heart.
Yeah.
And then the Spirit could just work on them. And I think as a missionary, the biggest thing that you can do is ask those questions when you're planning those lessons, because you'll have your personal study and then your companionship study. And I hope that you take it serious and that when you're doing your companionship study, you're like, all right, we've got this family or this individual that we have to teach. What's going to benefit them, and what questions do you think we could ask that, from what you learn about, that you found out about them, that will help them?
Yeah.
And asking those questions, and then the lesson will just take its shape from there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as I've come home and I've had various opportunities to teach, like Sunday school and pre-secorum, my best lessons are the ones that I feel like where I have really good questions.
Huh.
And then the lesson just, and then it becomes more of a discussion.
Yeah.
Which, they rolled that out. They're like, hey, this is more of a discussion. And the older generations had a really hard time with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't know how to ask those questions, and they just talk at you.
Right.
Which is fine and can be great, but sometimes it's not.
Right.
And so asking these questions, I feel like if you can follow the outlines that you can get from Preach My Gospel, I feel like those are probably there's every chapter in here has great stuff. But I feel like those 2 chapters, if you really study it, can help you be a better missionary and a better disciple of Christ than any other chapters in this book.
I love that.
And from my understanding, there are very few books that have been able to be written on the other side of the veil. Preach My Gospel is one of them.
Hmm.
The only two that I know of is Preach My Gospel and Jesus the Christ were written on the other side of the veil, meaning that they are truly inspired works. And when I was in the AMTC, Elder Holland came and talked to us about Preach My Gospel and why it's so important and why they needed it as opposed to what they had.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people have also listened to his talk, the one that he Feed My Sheep. He
Yeah.
talks about why we have Preach My Gospel
Yeah.
as opposed to the lessons because
Right.
we don't know what the investigator needs. The missionary has to figure that out.
Right.
And so it has to be in their hearts.
Yeah.
And they have to know, you have to know the scriptures. You have to know when someone, the example that he uses, someone, their child had passed away before, they had done had baptism. And so their priest told them, well, your child's in hell. And there was a missionary that talked to her and he had the sense to know what was in Moroni 8.
Right.
You have to know that because you don't know what it's going to be, and if it's in your heart and you know the gospel, when you knock on that door, when you're in that lesson and you're sitting there and you're toe to toe with them, and they're pouring their hearts out to you. It was always crazy. People would just start pouring their hearts out to you as missionaries. Like, I'm just this 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me this? I don't know.
So true.
But they're pouring their hearts out to you. But you have to, and then it also, after asking questions, it says listen.
Yeah.
You have to listen to know. And I think that can be something hard. I think it was probably hard for my generation, but I think it's even harder now to listen because
absolutely,
you got a phone in your hand.
Yeah.
You'll be talking to kids, and then you're like, take that phone out of your hand for 10 seconds and listen to me.
Yeah.
And then you see people and they're watching a movie and they can't just watch the movie. They're on their phone while they're watching the movie because we're so ADD. And so that's hard to be able to listen, but listen. Ask questions and then listen to the investigator and listen to the Spirit. And if you can do those things, even if you're not you're a scriptorian, or you can be the missionary that the Lord needs you to be.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you brought that up because this listen section's it was a crucial lesson for me to learn. I struggled pretty bad with learning the language, and so early on in my mission, I was just, memorizing stuff, just memorizing lines and points. When you're teaching the lesson, boom, I said that line, this is the next, and I think I had the same with, I'd say a lot of the similar questions, but then I just move on to that next point. And obviously it got better once I learned the language better and got more fluent. But I think the idea of listening, I want to just read just this first paragraph of it. It says, when you listen carefully to others, you understand them better. When you know that their thoughts and feelings are important to you, or when they know that their thoughts and feelings are important to you, they're more likely to be receptive to your teachings, share personal experiences, and make commitments. And so it makes me think of that quote, nobody knows how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And listening is a fast track to get to that point, to help them understand that you're there because you love them and you want the best for them. My other thought, I love how you pointed to chapter 6 too, because it's such gold. And the thing that I love about Preach My Gospel that you basically explained so eloquently is within the church, within Christ Church and the things that he's taught, a lot of the spiritual things can feel not very attainable or real. You think about faith or hope or charity, a lot of these attributes that are listed in this chapter. It's what is that? I know those are good things and I desire them, I want them, but what does that actually mean? What does it mean to have charity? What does it mean to be hopeful and have faith? And Preach My Gospel bridges that. It gives you practical ways to literally develop that attribute. And it does that throughout the whole manual. And I just think I'm so happy that I didn't realize that. That was a cool thought about it. being written on the veil, because I feel so um it's so important that people understand the power of this book. And not that it's more important than the Book of Mormon or more important than the Bible, but it is so important because it helps you become more like Jesus Christ, at least for me, more than almost any other book out there, because it points you to the Book of Mormon. It helps you navigate a lot of those spiritual things that are very difficult to do otherwise, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it's key because it's such a good tool to help you study the Book of Mormon better. Because a lot of times, like if you just read the Book of Mormon, sometimes I'll read a chapter, especially in Second Nephi, and I'll be like, "What did I even just read?"
Yeah.
You know, and then you kind of fizzle out and get discouraged from reading. But when you can, this helps you to be able to jump in and to study and to really understand the doctrine. Um, and that it's just so big because I remember reading like the New Testament, especially before my mission, and then reading it with Preach My Gospel and other tools. We were given a challenge by our mission president to read the New Testament, and every time Christ is speaking, to highlight it,
Huh.
and you'll be blown away
Yeah.
at how much he talks to you in the New Testament.
Wow.
And so I gained a love for the New Testament, and you he's showing you how to be a missionary
Yeah.
in the New Testament. That
Yeah.
whole New Testament, all of the experiences that him and the apostles are going through is basically how you can be a missionary,
Yeah.
like he and his apostles were.
Yeah. Huh.
And kind of like you were saying, you're like, I wanted in the church. It's easy to be like, oh, that's because you'll hear these stories and you'll be like, this is just such a great miracle that only happens to so and so. No, this can be. I've had experiences that were where I was like, I can't promise that.
Yeah.
That's and I kind of got rebuked by the Spirit in this blessing that I was giving to this girl that she had she had a tumor. She was 14 years old. She had a tumor, and in the blessing, I felt prompted to say, if you get baptized, you'll be made whole. And I said, Lord, I can't say that. And I kind of got rebuked, and I felt the Spirit tell me this is not your gospel. It's his gospel. You don't preach the gospel of Brock. You preach Jesus Christ's gospel. Say it. And so I said it. I was like, you're right. And then her and her family got baptized, and we found out a short little while later that her tumor went away. And that wasn't anything that I did. I was just there, but like I was like, I can't promise that. Because you think you're like, oh, healing the sick and afflicted like Christ did, or the apostles, or parting the Red Sea. You have that same power
I do.
as a missionary. I remember because when Holland came and talked to us in the MTC, he also said, he says, we're an apostles with a capital A, and you're an apostle with a lowercase a. You have the same. He said, you've gone to the temple. We have given you everything that you need
Mm.
to be able to do this. And so I think a lot of times you're like, oh, it's a big deal. And the Lord trusts you, which is insane that he trusts these now 18, 19, 20-year-old, whatever you
Right.
are. But he trusts you. But that trust comes, there's a price that you pay to earn that trust.
Right.
That isn't just given to you just because. It's probably because something that you did to earn that trust.
Yeah.
You proved to him that you were worthy of that trust, to be that missionary. And just before this experience had happened with giving that blessing, I remember I was in this area and I just gotten there and we had come off of an area where we had success. And so I go to this new area and it was tough. We just, there was nothing going the missionary before that was kind of the lead missionary. Hadn't really done much in that area. There wasn't much fruit, and I felt like we were starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And I just I was doing all the things that I had done before that had given us success. As a missionary, you're like, okay, these are the things that you do, and I was really striving, and I felt like I couldn't figure it out. And
Hmm.
I was like, man, usually I start to at least have people coming to church or something, especially in Mexico, like in the previous areas. But I remember talking with my mission president, and I kind of vented to him of like, I'm struggling. I don't know why we're not having success, but we're not. And he says, "Well, are you screwing around? Are you doing the right things?" And I said, "We're doing the right things," and we were striving to be obedient. We were doing our studies. We were working hard, a lot of hard work, and that's what as a mission it is hard work, and it takes a part of you. You
Yeah,
have to give everything, and
absolutely.
I was like, I feel like I'm giving it my best effort here. And he said, "Well, Elder Smith, I sent you to Hoyas because I wanted to figure out what kind of missionary you are." He said, "There's two kinds of missionaries. One, when they hit a barrier or an obstruction, they quit and give up.
Yeah.
The second missionary figures out how to get over that." And so I kind of, was like, all right, I'm going to try to be the missionary that figures this out. That I don't want to be the missionary that quits and gives up.
Yeah.
I want to be the missionary that gets around this. And so we find this great investigator. Her husband was less active, so we're kind of reactivating him. She's golden investigator. Um, she actually was like, "I want my baby to have a baby blessing," but
Mm.
her husband wasn't worthy. So the bishop was like, "So who's going to give the baby blessing?" And she pointed to me. And so I was like,
Is
"Oh
that
my gosh."
right?
Yeah, I was like, "I don't know what to say." I was like, I didn't have to memorize, the opening lines there. And
Yeah, yeah.
luckily my bishop, he had served in New York, so he spoke English. And I
Oh,
think he
okay.
saw the fear on my face.
Yeah.
And he's like, in English, he's like, "Hey, I'll tell you what you need to say in the beginning, and then the revelation and spirit will
Spirit will
take
take
over."
over.
And you just and I was
Wow.
like, okay, so
That's
we're
awesome.
we're at this point. And then she goes to her baptismal interview, and then she passes her baptismal interview. And then that night, because usually you do like the interviews like on a Saturday, and then they get baptized the next day is how we would do it. And so that night, her and her husband get in a bad fight,
Oh.
and she leaves. And so I call to check in on her, and she's like, "Hey, I'm at my parents, and I'm not moving back in." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" I was like, "She was getting baptized tomorrow," and I was like, "Well, there's missionaries there," and I was like, "We'll make sure we get you in touch with those missionaries." And so then I report that to the my leaders, and then that night as we're coming home from work, working in the field, I see two missionaries standing outside my apartment. I was like, "Oh boy." And it was my zone leaders, and we go in, and they just begin to berate me. Maybe it was a different era. It was a little bit more wild west, but they just begin to chew me out and tell me how horrible of a missionary I was, and how we were doing all the wrong things, and that
Huh.
this was supposedly my fault, that this lady and her husband had a fight,
Wow.
and that she wasn't getting baptized was due to my lack of faith. I don't know, something along those lines. But they were um, getting after us pretty aggressively
What in the world?
in a way that I wouldn't approve.
Yeah.
And I just remember it got to a point where one of them, he was a little bit more aggressive, for sure, one of the zone leaders, but he looked at me and he said, "If your mother knew what kind of missionary you were, she would be ashamed of you." And man, that I felt pretty low. That hit me, and um, I just remember thinking that night as they left, I felt like a failure. I felt like I had let myself down. I'd let my companion down, um, my mission president, and I felt like I'd let my parents down. I felt pretty low, probably the lowest I felt up at that point in my life. And I remember the next day was Sunday, and just getting ready. My companion and I, we were pretty somber, but we said our prayer before heading out for the house, and I just said, Lord, I have done what I can do. The rest is in your hands. And we headed to church. And that Sunday, a miracle happened. um, we had more people in church show up than I've ever had. We had all these families. I think we had 14 or 15 new people show up to church. And they were seeds that had been planted for the previous 6 weeks of all of our hard work.
Right.
And they all showed up that day.
Wow.
And I think, I don't know why, but sometimes you have to get to that point where you're like, Lord, I've done what I can do. The rest is in your hands. And, we were able to turn that around through the Lord's help. And that following month, we actually led the mission in the zone in baptisms.
Wow.
And all those people got baptized. And it was such an awesome experience. But before that it was hard.
Right.
It's the hardest thing I'd done.
Yeah.
Up until that point in my life. And I think I was able to prove to the Lord what kind of missionary I was.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the Lord showed me what missionary I could be.
Yeah.
Because I was able to overcome this hard obstacle and was able to buckle down and do the work.
Yeah.
And to be able to have better relationships with the members and to have these people come to church and their retention, they were awesome. These families were so strong in the gospel. And I remember as I was leaving, it was such a blessing because I was in that area for 4 transfers, but when I left, my investigators would help bless and pass the sacrament. And they were good people.
Yeah.
And they were good members. And and I don't know why, but it felt like, you know what? You had to put in all that hard work to reap the benefit. And that's how it goes.
Right.
And that's how life goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember because I went to the next area and I followed the same missionary and there was nothing again. And I was kind of like, all right, we'll do it again. And then we turned that area around and we were able to have success. And then my last area was probably my toughest area. But because I had this experience where I knew what it took.
Yeah.
To be able to do the work, because it's not easy work.
Yeah.
And was able to work in all my areas and to find success and to overcome it. But that experience that I had in Hoyas was, I feel like, my version of the experience that Peter had on the shores of Galilee with the Savior, where he says, "Do you love me?"
Yeah.
Peter says yes, and he asks him 3 times, and then he says, "Then feed my sheep." I think that's what it all comes down to, and that's why it's so important to have Christ-like attributes, to have that relationship with your Savior. Because that's what it takes to be missionaries. You got to dig deep. It's a gut check.
Yeah.
And if you love him, you will feed his sheep. Yeah. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I would tell the generation that's preparing to go on missions now, it's okay to feel overwhelmed and to be afraid.
Right.
Fear is totally fine and normal.
Yeah.
But don't let it overwhelm you or not permit you to go and serve a mission because you're so afraid or because it's hard. Of course it's hard.
Yeah.
Life's hard. But if you can make it through your mission and you let it change you, your whole life after that, you'll be able to know how to, because life's hard. You come home and you're like, okay, I did the mission. And then you're like, I'm ready for career and marriage. And then you get into those and then you're like, oh, this is hard still.
Yeah.
But you can do the hard things. You can overcome the hard times, especially when you learn to rely on your Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And Preach My Gospel is a great tool for that. Your mission is a great tool for that, because in this, you can learn what you need to learn on how to be a good Christ-like missionary and a good Christ-like person.
Yeah.
And it also, in this book, it's like, hey, how does the Spirit talk to you? That's huge to be able to know that.
Yeah.
Especially as a missionary.
Right.
Before and after.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a missionary, this book still will help you to be a better follower of his.
Yeah.
To be a better member. And so that's just so huge. And it's important to know that you will probably be pushed to your limit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone has to, I think, to some extent, everyone has to have that because missionary work is not easy. Salvation is not a cheap experience. It wasn't for the Savior. It isn't for you as a missionary, even though, yes, you are teaching the truth and you're helping people to get closer to God.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
And it's going to require all of you, the best that you have to give, and then some.
Right.
And if you can rely on the Lord to let Him carry you when you're feeling down, that'll be huge because that's life.
Yeah.
There's times when after I've felt how I did that day in Hoyas, and you just rely on the Lord to let Him
Yeah.
keep you moving forward.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Seriously, there's so many good takeaways from that, and those stories are incredible. Those miracles are still happening. I love how you brought up that power is the same that Moses operated under, that all of the apostles of the Old Testament of the New Testament and Old Testament used. Yeah, there. I mean, I'm speechless, honestly. Like that, you said so many good things that I think will resonate with the people that are watching, especially those preparing to go on missions. But I love how you talked about how, it'll just set you up for success. If you put your heart and soul into your mission, it will set you up for the rest of your life, because those trials and challenges are not over when you get home. If anything, they just begin. It's just a new set of things. But the mission really helps you realize what your potential is, and it pushes you to your limits. It helps you realize that, if I include the Savior in my life and if I prioritize Him, not that it'll be easy, but it'll be a lot more joyful and a lot more simple, I think.
Yeah.
He helps you kind of realize what matters most. But Brock, thank you so much. I mean, I would love to just chat all day long and hear more, but I guess is there anything else that you would care to share that you maybe haven't touched on
Um,
before we wrap up?
just kind of to reiterate, I think yeah, missions are everyone that has the ability to serve should serve because you just so much good can come from it.
Yeah.
Not just the people that you affect, but how it affects yourself. And that's important. And that's why, we have preached my gospel because we want it to be in the hearts of the missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to be able to take that and, you know, when you were converted, then convert your brother. And it's so much easier if you're converted to convert people that you go teach. So I would just say absorb what you can. Don't be intimidated if you aren't the best at studying or whatever, because I
Yeah,
wasn't. And
right.
then, I did my studies while I was on my mission, and I've been abysmal since, but I still try. Luckily, callings in the church are there
Yeah,
for a
seriously.
reason to keep you studying and teaching if you're a teacher or anything with it, they keep you going. But I think it's important that you need to make sure that it's in your heart, because when you become a missionary, it isn't just 2 years. It isn't just 18 months. It is a lifelong commitment. You need to be able to, you know, one of the lessons is the gospel, which is faith, repentance, baptism, receiving the gift of the Holy Ghost, and enduring to the end. That fifth step of that gospel is pretty fierce.
Yes, it is.
And if you can repeat steps 1 through 4 consistently, then you can do the fifth step. And that's why it has to be in your heart.
Yeah.
You have to be fully converted, because enduring to the end. I mean, I was baptized at 8, so I did steps 1 through 4 at age 8,
Yeah.
and that was How old am I? 34. That was 26 years ago.
Yeah.
And man, that fifth step's been pretty tough, but if you can stay the course and continue to take those lessons that you learned as a missionary, uh, everything I am I owe to my mission experience, which might not say a lot to some people, but to me it definitely changed the trajectory that I was on before.
Yeah.
And it made me a lot better person, and it can do that for you. Um, my experience that I had in Hoyas, though, I feel like as I was kind of pondering when I was like, what do I want to share? And that one just kept coming back to my mind.
Huh.
One of the things, though, that I did want to touch on is I could have chosen to be offended by what those elders said.
Yeah.
I think that would have been very easy to have been like, well, my mission was a horrible experience because of that. But it ended up being a point where I was able to be optimistic and choose to not be offended by it
Yeah.
and to focus on the gospel.
Right.
It's easy to get offended in this church, and I think that's what causes a lot of people to leave, or as missionary they're like, I had a bad experience. It's like everybody had a bad experience.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that
It's all bad.
it's all bad, and maybe it was supposed to be a learning experience.
Right.
So you can choose what you want it to be.
Yeah.
If you do have a bad experience like that or something way worse than that, it's okay.
Yeah.
But don't choose to let that dictate how it goes. Your mission, because had I have let that sour me as a missionary, some of the greatest blessings and joy and happiness moments that I had were that following transfer.
Huh.
And the transfers that led to be. So hang in there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my patriarchal blessing said is that I would be blessed to serve a mission and that I would have joy in that experience.
Yeah.
When I look at my 2 years, there's a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Even though there were a lot of those really, really tough, just
brutal
moments.
Yeah.
But I look at them with a smile.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's never over for me. It's been 15 years. And 15 years and counting, and still has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And it can if you let it be.
Right.
And, it, like we were saying, life can be hard before or after missions. But that's what we came here to do. We came here to be tested.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that I can say, it's study and prepare. The Lord will make up the rest.
Yeah.
He will show you the kind of missionary and the kind of person that you can be. And then you will find out for yourself, which is very important. And I love my mission. I think my mission was probably one of the greatest things. It put me in it changed my life in such a way that I feel like I'm able to set out the goals that I have and to be able to realistically hit them.
Yeah.
Whether that's a spiritual goal or a life goal, whether that's work related. And so if you let it change your life, it can impact you and make you who the Lord needs you to be. And it'll allow you to see yourself through the Lord's eyes, which is huge because it's easy you're your own worst critic.
Right.
But if you can learn to look, not only, I think it's important to see your investigators and the people that you teach and your companions through the Lord's eyes. And that's one of those attributes, I think, if you have that charity. But if you can look at yourself and not beat yourself up so bad and see yourself the way that the Lord sees you, and see the value that you have to Him, it's going to make life so much easier, and you'll be able to love yourself and you'll be able to love others.
Yeah. Like I said, thank you. Seriously. I learned a lot today, and as I said in the beginning, you've always been someone that I've looked up to, and the way that you talk about your mission says a lot about what you were like as a missionary, but who you are now as a disciple of Christ. And that's what really matters, that enduring to the end, like you said, it's a grind, but we got to do it, and it can be joyful. And a mission really does just set you up for that. to figure it out. But yeah, go if you're watching, go check out chapter 6, and was it chapter 10 was the other one you referred
chapter
to?
6 and chapter 10.
Cool. Yeah, so those are some go-to chapters for Brock, and go check those out. Read that and preach my gospel. But Brock, thank you, bro.
Of course.
You're the man. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
But
I've always got stories.
yeah, sweet. Well, thank you. We'll catch you on the next episode.